Welcome to a new edition of Showtime with Coop. Insightful BS with my Laker teammates and NBA legends. And we got another NBA legend in the house right here, Mike Warren. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
My pleasure, Cooper. You're giving me honors that I don't really deserve. I never really played in the NBA. I went from UCLA into the film business. I was drafted by Seattle. You know, back in those days, you had about 400 rounds, and I was on the very last one. And I got a contract through the mail from Seattle, and it was like receiving, you know how you get junk mail that says occupants. That's what my letter looked like, man. I opened it up. It was like a mimeograph form. They had penciled in my name in case I said no. They could write somebody else's name in.
Listen, get out here with that talk, man.
And so I opened it up, and you know, and I had been All-American and played against bigger guys and stuff, and had done really well. But they offered me 10 grand, and I had to try out. And you know, growing up in Indiana, man, we didn't have Chicago Bulls weren't what they became. You know, and so my heroes were those guys who went to my high school prior to. So I didn't grow up with that burning desire to play in the NBA. I started thinking about it when I was a senior at UCLA. But when I got that letter, I was like, man, I can make more money than this hustling, you know, in the business.
Well, like to me,
I know
you still an NBA
legend. I know that it would take me years to make that 10 grand.
Mike, listen, you're an NBA legend. Don't get out of here with that. Anyway, we got Mike here. Mike, you just already hit on my first question. Who are some of your role models growing up?
Oh, man. You know, I had to start with my family, you know, my pops and my moms. Then I had an older brother who was a great athlete. My mom used to always remind me that I got my basketball talent from her. But it was guys from my high school, man, Herbie Lee, John Coleman, who was Mr. Basketball in Indiana back in the day. You know, Indiana was the hotbed back when I was growing up, you know, and so it was all guys who played before me. Obviously, Oscar Robertson, who played the Christmas Addicts. I loved watching him play. Even though I was young, I used to watch Tommy Hawkins, who became a Lakers because he went to Notre Dame. But though, you know, my main heroes were the guys that I saw play growing up.
Mike, one thing that your mom or dad gave you that you still, or said to you, that you still hold dear to you and to your success so far?
Oh man, it's be yourself. You know, you can only be the second best of somebody else, but you can be the very best of who you are. So, you know, it's always trying to be true to yourself, be honest with yourself. You know, being in sports or in the entertainment business, you have a lot of people who are patting you on the back and people writing great things. And, you know, and you have to be able to judge for yourself when you did well and when you didn't. And so I think that was probably the best advice. That was echoed by John Wooden later on.
And again, getting ready to hit on that favorite subject right there, great words of wisdom, because those words of wisdom and you being yourself brought you to UCLA, one of the greatest basketball teams and one of the greatest coaches that's ever played this game. A little bit about you, Mike, starting guard from 66 to 68, led by our guy, Lou Alcindor. You know what? Our career has paralleled with different people that we have experienced and have been with. Both teams. Legendary coach John Wooden. How does it feel to be on one of the greatest college teams that's ever played the game? You guys went 30-0, man.
Yeah, that my sophomore year or junior year, we went 30-0, and the following year 29-1. You know, John Wooden never saw me play.
No.
Never saw me play. My coach in high school played for John Wooden in high school and in college. My junior high school coach played for Wooden in high school, and I think even in college. So when I had just come back from Kansas, and I'm walking down the hall, and my geometry teacher came out of the classroom, and he had been like a statistician. And I only knew him as a teacher and the guy who kept our stats. And he stopped me in the hall and said, have you decided where you're going to go to school? I said, no, not yet. Michigan is supposed to be sending a jet for me to fly there. And I've got these offers other places, been to Kansas. And he said, well, Johnny Wooden is a friend of mine. But little did I know that he was Coach Wooden's first assistant at my high school back in the 40s. And he knew more basketball, Wooden later told me, than Wooden knew at that particular time. In fact, he's in our Indiana Hall of Fame as a basketball coach. He never talked about any of that. He was such an unassuming man, very much like Coach Wooden. And so he was the one that first told me about UCLA. Hey, Coop, and you can appreciate this, man. And Ari, I said your area code is 312. That's Chicago.
That's right.
So,
That's where I grew up.
You know what I'm getting ready to talk about. I came out to UCLA in March, mid-March, snow still on the ground, right? And so I got a stocking hat on, a long overcoat, and I get off of that plane, Coop, and that heat hit me. And I said, this is where I'm going to school. I'm going to school here, man. There was nothing on campus. It was spring break, no parties, no girls, no under the table money, nothing, man. And so Wooden laid out the plans for Paulie. And he was very impressive because he didn't say, when you come here, your sophomore year, you'll be starting. He didn't make any promises, just that you'll get a great education and it's a great institution. And so he laid out the plans to Paulie. But when I went back home and I saw my high school coach and he said, how did it go? I said, yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I met a guy who played on the national championship team. His name was Kenny Washington. He took me around and I met Coach, who was very impressive and laid out the plans. But for some reason, if Coach Wooden and UCLA, if they don't want me, there's USC, there's Cal State, there's North.
Oh, you stand on the West.
I wanted to get where that heat was, man. And he said, if you don't play for Johnny Wooden, you're not going to go to UCLA. And it worked out.
Well, you know what? That was one of the fantastic things about it, because you know what? I get jealous of UCLA players back then, because I remember watching you guys on TV all the time. But obviously, being in Westwood, playing for one of the greatest basketball minds. The one thing that I always was impressed by Coach Wooden, I never ever saw him yell at you guys. I mean, am I wrong or right, or did he yell at you in practice? But
oh, he got on us. His way was his favorite saying. If he got upset, was "Gracious sakes alive." Right now we know in the heat of battle, you may say "good gracious,"
yeah,
whatever, but you know what that really means. And he would always remind us that if we weren't playing the way he wanted us to play, which was really team basketball. That's what he stressed, fundamentals and team basketball. And if we weren't doing that, he had a great seat right next to him where we could watch the game. So, one of the really great things that I admire about Coach, and there are tons, but as a basketball coach, he was not afraid to bench his star player. And though he didn't treat us all the same, because that's ridiculous, Yeah. Everybody's got different talent. And one of the things he used to always say is that, I'm gonna love you all the same, but I may not like you all the same. Mm-hmm. And so he was the kind of guy that would tell Bill Walton, if you don't get that haircut by 30, whatever time, then I'll make the call for you to go someplace else. When Sidney Wicks told him he had these lamb chops, Coach, you don't have the big fella anymore, meaning Kareem, Lou Alcindor at that time. You know, you don't have him anymore. He said, no, Sidney, I don't. But if you don't have those lamb chops cut off by such and such a time, it won't matter. and he meant it. You know, one time someone asked him, said, Coach, would you really have called another school for Bill Walton? And just like a parent, he said, well, you know, it didn't matter if I would or wouldn't, but he believed I would.
Right.
That's all that matters.
So,
Mike, how big of, and we all hear about Coach Wooden, the one thing we hear about is a pyramid of success.
yes.
How important or how big is that still that you involved that not only in your athletic career, but in your everyday life?
It's interesting, you know, as an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kid, the pyramid of success didn't mean a doggone thing. Nothing. Let me see if you can just, I don't know if you can see up there.
There it is.
Yeah, we see that. Yeah.
Pyramid of
Right.
success.
Yeah. So as a player, you know, I didn't want to have this 55-year-old man trying to tell me, you know, what to do. I had my dad who could do that, and an uncle who lived in California. But once I became an adult, and particularly when I had started having children, those words resonated. Also, the words of my parents. You know, hard work. You know, success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of, you know, going on and on and on, man. Those kind of things, they don't resonate when you're young, because you're too young to understand what it really means, you know. But once you start, when you're responsible for somebody else, like children, then I hear Wooden all the time. I hear my parents all the time, you know, work hard, be a great example, you know, love what you're doing, do it with enthusiasm, prepare yourself, you know, the best that you can possibly can, you know. Lack of preparation is failing. Prepare is whatever that's that coin.
Preparing to fail.
Preparing to fail. Thank you. There's just so many things that, I mean, just looking at him live his life, you know, the way he carried himself, you know, I never heard him swear. I never saw him take a drink. Not that those things are bad things, but he was consistent.
Yeah.
And I think as a parent, you have to be consistent. I mean, there are many times I have four children, all adults now, and I can remember going back saying, not necessarily in those words, you know, I don't particularly love you right now. I mean, I like you. No, reverse. I don't particularly like you right now, but I love you.
Right.
You know, and realizing that each child is different, and having to deal with each one separately and differently, you know, and I'm close to them now, and I was close to them growing up, and so I owe a lot of that to the lessons I learned from Coach, the lessons I learned from my parents, and lessons I learned from relatives.
Be quick, but don't hurry is one of my favorites. That's one I use for my kids all the time.
Yeah. And people say, well, what does that mean? You know, is how do you be quick and don't hurry, you know? And it's one of those things that is take your time doing something and do it well. Don't rush through it, but be quick as you're trying to do it, you know, and even going back to learn it to the best of your ability, so you don't have to think about it. And then you can be quick and you won't even hurry, you know. It's wow. He was deep, man. He was probably one of the smartest people I ever met, wow. Easily. And the things that he accomplished off the court resonated more so than the things he did on court.
What about the shoe tying? I remember reading about, you know.
Oh, that was crazy, man. It's like, here I'm 18 years old. And I'm like, he blows that whistle. Everyone hit, you know, get on the ground, hit the floor. and we're gonna go through tying your shoes.
Wait, Mike. That was a drill. I mean, he said that was a drill.
It was, yeah. Well, if you can call it a drill, yeah.
It's all about tying their shoes.
Having everybody sit down and going through how to tie your shoe.
Wow.
I'm like, wait a minute, man. But check this out. Most important part of your body, for what, your feet. If you're an athlete,
yeah,
your feet. If you get blisters on your feet, you can't play. So he not only taught us how to or retaught us how to tie our shoes, but how to put our socks on, because you didn't want to have any crinkles in the bottom of your soles, because then it would rub and cause blisters. So there was always a method to his madness, but initially that reaction is like, what? You know, we couldn't say it out loud. Did you just hear this fool? He said, what did you? He said, unlace your shoe and I'm gonna teach you how to tie them. I'm like, man, I learned that at 4 years old.
You know what? I've heard of attention to detail, but that is to the extreme there.
Yep.
That is
totally.
It. That is it, man. And that's the way our practices were run. And I'm sure, you know, you, Coop, as a high schooler going to New Mexico, it was the same thing, you know, Lakers. The details are always the most important things, you know. I even tell my children, you know, it's not the size of the gift that you give, you know, the idea that you thought about giving something. It can be small, and the fact that you remembered to do whatever it was that you thought warranted something is means everything. And with Coach Wooden, it was repetition, so you didn't have to think about it, man. You know, and that's important. If you get a guy on the court and you can see he's thinking, he's done.
Yep.
He can't do it. He may as well be paralyzed, because he's like, he's lost, you know. And those guys who make it look effortlessly, you know, it's hard. You know, it's really tough. And the hours that they spent, I mean, you on defense and shooting your jumper, man, that was like hours and hours and hours of getting those muscles trained to react when you wanted them to react, you know. And Wooden was a stickler for detail, man, and fanciness. I watch these guys. I don't know about you, Coop, but you were pretty basic, fundamental player. I didn't see
it, baby. That's how I was taught. Be basic. Be
basic, man. You know, and do that really well. Well, now you see these. I just saw a YouTube video of a kid who was about 5 or 6 years old. No, maybe about 8. Going between his legs. I mean, it was unbelievable. You know, but most of the time you're doing stuff that doesn't get you to point B. You know, it's like, why are you going between your legs and you haven't made your defensive move?
Like, who's your
right? It's a waste
of those UCLA teams. Who's your favorite teammate?
Oh, without question. Lucius Oliver Allen. Lucius, his middle name is Oliver, but I call him O. You know, there's the big O, and Lucius. I don't call him a little O. I just call him O. Man, Lucius, when he first got to UCLA, I saw Lucius do things that were unbelievable. He had the best fake, because he shot his fake was almost like his regular shot. And I saw guys flying. It was humorous and quick as a cat, you know. And so playing with him was like me playing with the right side of my body, you know. I'm the left side, he's the right. I knew what he was going to do before he did it. He knew what I was going to do. So without question, it was playing with O.
Well, you're listening to Showtime with Coop. Today's guest is Mike Warren. Great person, great man, great father, great player at UCLA. Mike, we're at the point now where we call Coop's lightning round. I'm going to give you 4 names, and you just tell me as much or as little bit about those people, okay?
Okay.
We've already talked about him a little bit. Tell us something else. John Wooden.
John Wooden grew up in the Depression age, probably never ever left that that mentality, was not necessarily frugal, but appreciate everything he got, worked hard, also instilled that work ethic in all of his teams. Was not one to lavish tremendous praise on you until after you got out of UCLA. I mean, he told me things later on about me playing that blew my mind. But I would say, you know, I found him to be fair, funny, really funny, great sense of humor, and a lover of God and a lover of his family.
The great Pearl Bailey.
Pearl Bailey? Oh man, Pearl Bailey. How raw can I get on this show, man?
As raw as you want.
You know, I worked on who Norman, is that you, with Red Fox and Pearl Bailey, and Red was the best. If I can tell you two stories, one about Red and one about Pearl. But first, Pearl. Pearl had come on the set. She was the ambassador from President Ford. He had named her the ambassador of the United States, and so to the world. And so she comes on the set, and she and Red at that time didn't have a great relationship. I'm not sure what that was about, but it wasn't that great. So when Pearl came on the set, Red Fox said, "Pearl Bailey's on the set. Don't nobody say fuck." and she went ballistic, man. She stormed off into her dressing room, because she was a lady, man. Really, really a kind, beautiful, beautiful spirit. And I adored her. I mean, I have, I don't know, 3 or 4 books where she autographed them, and she was a delight to work with. One of the kindest, freest giving person as an actor. You know, she gave as much as she would receive, and I have nothing but the utmost respect for that woman. She was she called herself my second mom. But the other story about Red, this is really raw. So we were going to lunch, and so I said, "Red, I gotta make a stop off to take a leak." He said, "Oh yeah, me too." You know, so we both in there taking a leak, and I finished first, and I go to the sink and I'm washing my hands, you know, and like my mom and dad taught me, man. And so Red is just like, he just gets up and walks out. I said, "Red, where are you going?" He said, what you mean?" I said, "You're not gonna wash your hands?" He said, "What for?" I said, you just took a piss." He said, "Oh, is that why you washing your hands?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, did you piss on your hands?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, is your dick dirty?" You should wash your hands before you take a piss. He was the best, man.
The next person, our friend, our teammate, Lou Alcindor, aka Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Man, you know, on that basketball team where I played with him in '67 and '68, Kareem and Kenny Heights were brainiacs, man. I mean, I said Wooden was one of the smartest people. Kareem by far was one of the smartest people I ever met as well. And a great teammate. Our college days together were phenomenal, you know. And when I went to the airport to pick him up with Coach Norman and at that time Edgar Lacey, and I got implicit instructions from Coach Wooden that said, "Whatever you do, don't stare at him. He will be taller than anybody you've ever seen. You're going to be amazed, I can tell you that, but don't stare at him because he's sensitive about his height." And so that was at a time when the airport had these plexiglass artworks done by junior high and elementary students. So when he gets off the plane and I see him duck, I'm like, oh my God, man. And I've seen clips of him, you know, because he was on the Ed Sullivan Show with Edgar Lacey, and Edgar really had a great relationship with him. And so I'm all I can think of is, man, I cannot stare. Coach told me, don't stare, you know. And so but I'm like, but how can I not? Okay, so I can't stare. So we're walking down the hall. And so I'm like looking off to the side, and I can see me clearly, but I can't see him at all. And I'm like, man, I don't know what we have to do, but we got to get this cat, man. And Lacey took him around campus, wouldn't spoke to him, and the rest of history, decided to come. But Coop, you know, as a teammate, my sophomore year, I averaged almost 17 points a game, broke Hazard's records as a sophomore guard. But, you know, having him come in, I'm not realizing the impact he's going to have on my game, you know? And so I went from almost 17 that first year to like 11, maybe 12. But we won. And I was an All-American, averaging 12 points a game, and playing alongside of him. And he was unselfish. You know, I mean, we would pray to have zones played, because that means he was going to have to kick the ball out. And he did, you know, he did. Never knew anybody who knew more about jazz. I was Motown, man. I'm still Motown, you know, Philly sound. And I'm hearing this music, Coltrane coming out from underneath his door. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And he had a map on his wall of a New York subway system. I mean, he was all New York, man. But as a teammate and as a friend coming through UCLA, I can't say anything but good things about him.
We have Mike Warren on Showtime with Coop. Mike, couple more questions. After you finish your illustrious career at UCLA, you go into acting, okay? And some of the things that you did, a plethora of things, The White Shadow, City of Angels, Marcus Welby.
Hill Street Blues.
Yeah, Hill Street Blues. Mike, who of all the things that you've done, and that's just to name a few, what actress, what's the most famous actress that you kissed on screen?
Boy, I'm glad you didn't say off screen. Let me think. On screen, you know what, Coop, this may surprise you, man. And we're talking about in the 80s, when you didn't see a whole lot of Black folk kissing one another.
True.
And I would remember, man, I can't remember not one scene where I had a love scene on Hill Street. I had a lot of great things to do, but
wow,
maybe I kissed Lynn Moody, but it wasn't like one of those passionate kisses, you know. They brought her on to play my girlfriend, but I think she only was on maybe 1 or 2 shows at the most. But, you know, Bobby Hill was a eunuch, man. I used to say, man, when you gonna, you know, let me get down, you know. But that didn't happen too much on screen, man.
And you know,
I kissed Cicely Tyson.
Ooh, another good one.
I played.
What was that like,
boyfriend?
Mike? What was that like?
It was a dream, man.
Was the lip soft or hard?
Coop's the best.
Answer the question, Mike. Was the lip soft or hard?
Soft, man. They
Okay.
were soft, man. She was one of the most incredible I worked with a couple of times. I did a series. I had a recurring role playing a boyfriend, and then I did another series where she was a social worker in the play, and Alfred Woodard was in that piece. But I called her the queen, man. You know, when I met her, I said, "You're royalty," you know, and whatever I can do to make, you know, make whatever you need better, please don't hesitate, you know, to tell me, because I have so much respect for you. And the show was a John Romano who had been a writer on Hill Street, but Cicely is probably one of the most impressive people I ever worked with.
Mike, last question, sir. Who wins the NBA this year? Who wins the East? Who wins the West? And who wins the championship?
The one with the most points, the one with the most games.
Hey, you have Dallas and Golden State.
Well, you know, I'm going to pull for West Coast, so I'm pulling for California school. I'm pulling school team. I'm pulling for Golden State, man. I you know, love watching Steph play and the Warriors. I mean, you know, they play the game most of the time. You know, a lot of times they get so careless, man. I'm like, come on, man, you guys are better than that. But you know, but to watch them play is textbook.
And then you have Boston and Miami on the other East.
You know, and when growing up, I was a Boston guy until you guys, till Showtime, you know, and then I became full-on Laker. I gotta go with Boston, though, you know. You know, that rivalry between the Lakers and Boston always makes it difficult for me to pick Boston.
You know what? That's what I say when I talk about Boston. Oh, yeah, but you know what? They're pretty good this year. And Boston and Golden State meet up. Who wins the championship? In your eyes, it's going to be Golden State.
I think Boston, man. I think that, you know, if they get that far, that size, I think it's going to be too difficult to overcome. I have a question for you. Give me a funny story about the big fella.
Kareem?
There's only one big fella, man.
Well, there's Wilt Chamberlain. Okay, I understand what you said. Hey, okay, we had for Kareem's birthday, you know, his birthday is April 16th. Mine is April 15th. So when we were playing in 1988, for Kareem's birthday, because he would come to the games with his UCLA jacket on, an old pair of jeans, some Adidas with no socks, and he would just, you know, get in. So what we did is everybody cut up his clothes. We left his UCLA jacket alone, but we cut up his jeans. I mean, everybody took some scissors and cut them all up. And this is not necessarily a funny story because, well, it's funny, but it ended up bad for me. So Kareem gets out of the shower and he holds his pants up and they're shredded. And he goes, "Who did this?" And everybody's kind of like looking there. So we all started laughing and said, "Happy birthday." He go, "Okay, I'm going to get you, MS. I'm going to get you." And Kareem systematically, Mike, got each and every one of us back in some kind of way. With me, we were on a flight to New York. And we were, you know, it's a 4-hour flight and stuff like that. So Kareem sat in the first seat and Magic and I sat in the second seat. I put the top, you know, the blanket over my head and I'm sleeping. And halfway through it, I'm starting to smell this burning smell. It's like, okay, what's going on and stuff? And, you know, back then we had hair, Mike. You remember?
Right, that's right.
I had hair. Kareem had put Nair right here on this side and this side of my hair. And I'm like, okay. And I see that, Mike, I had to go bald from then forward because I had no hair. No hair grew here. So I had that bacon strip for the last half of my career and into my coaching career. That's why I'm bald. That's why it's so shiny right here. Kareem put Nair. And to this day, when he talked about it, this guy laughs. It's like you're laughing, Mike. He fucking laughs, man. And I told Kareem, this is what you reduced me to, early baldness. So,
that's a good one, man.
What about you? What about you, Mike? What's your story?
Funny story about Kareem?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, let me think. I think probably, you know, my room was across from his, were diagonally across from his. I was in 101. I think he was in 100 or something like that. And so I could always tell when Kareem would come in late, because you would hear these footsteps coming out. It would be quiet, dark. You hear these footsteps, and then you hear, oh, and like, what the hell was that? Kareem had hit his head on the clock.
Mike Warren, we got to end it there, my man. Anything you got going on that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, I sure do, man. On May 26th, I have an art exhibition. I'm a photographic artist, and it's
Great
an
pictures
exhibition that
behind
I'm
you,
doing
too. I
with my
love that.
daughter at the Ebell of Los Angeles at 741 South Lucerne Street. Opening night. There's an opening reception from 5 to 8 p.m.
Awesome.
Everyone is invited. Please come out and see our artwork. I'm online at www.michaelwarrenphotofantasy.com. I'm on IG, Michael Warren Photo Fantasy. So come on out and bring some money too. Shoot.
No,
That's the purpose of having an exhibition is to sell.
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there.
Well, don't just be there, Coop. Bring that checkbook.
Well, you know what? That's going to be hard because my wife don't let that out of her sight. She holds on to our money with her hands and her feet. So, but I'll be there. I'll be supportive.
Your presence, man. In all sincerity, I appreciate you. Coming on our show, our spec show, to be interviewed, and that day was one of the best days of the for the whole year that we've been filming. We had you in the morning, and then we went and shot Mr. Cartoon in the afternoon, who was spectacular. So thank you, and thank you for having me on your show. Nice meeting you, Ari.
Great to meet you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
There you have it, Mike Warren. Love you, man. Love you too. Love you, and thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right.